Suits featured a number of antagonists and villains that were at odds with Mike and Harvey throughout the show's history. Mike Ross certainly didn't have a clean record, considering his whole narrative arc in the first half of the show was the fact that he did not have the necessary qualifications to practice law. But despite this, he is set up as the protagonist of the show, alongside his friend and mentor Harvey Specter, who is arguably even more shady than Mike. Harvey was a legitimate lawyer, but due to his own ego and pride, he operated outside the lines, thinking that he knew better, and could get his way. However, there is no doubt that Mike and Harvey made an incredible team, helped a lot of people in need, and eventually came good on all of their earlier shenanigans. However, they had a lot of opposition on that road, with several characters who tried to turn their lives upside down, and ultimately serve their own selfish desires. When considering villains in Suits, a lot of these characters are morally grey, aggressive, threaten Harvey and Mike's ability to continue practicing law and so on. However, now all of them are actually evil. And occasionally, these characters can stand out as being more legitimate lawyers than Harvey and Mike, though they tend to get bested by their superior knowledge, finesse, and charm. Enter Travis Tanner, one of the first antagonists in the show's run, who appeared prominently in the first 3 seasons and then returned as a changed man in Season 5. Travis was an early rival to Harvey, though Harvey was able to beat him in court in the 2 cases where they went head-to-head. However, working alongside Daniel Hardman to push things around behind Harvey's back, Travis still earned the title of antagonist. 7. Andrew Malick. Usman ally in Grimcutty. Moving swiftly from the start of the show to its end, Andrew Malick stands out as one of the primary rivals to be included in the show throughout its final 3 seasons. Malick was a deputy attorney general in New York, and he had some really shady mutual friends with Harvey. And morally speaking, there is no doubt that Malick is a genuine villain in Suits. Malick held a position of power, and instead of using that authority with consideration, thoughtfulness, and an understanding of his position, he lied, manipulated, cheated, and did everything he could to try and win. Malick was locked in a conflict with Harvey towards the end of the show, and he did everything he could to try and destroy Harvey and his firm. However, thanks to Harvey and Mike's exceptional skills, they were able to prove Malick's fraudulent dealings, and had him fired and sent to prison for his actions. Jack Soloff was a crummy partner at Pearson Specter Lit who wanted to push lawyers like Harvey around to establish himself as a big deal, but things didn't go to plan. Soloff continued to create distance and distrust with his colleagues, continually lying, but eventually it all came crashing down on his own head. However, Jack did have some moments where he seemed like a half-decent guy, like when he worked on a case with Mike Ross and the pair made a connection. However, almost as soon as he started to settle in at PSL, Mike's secret got out, and Soloff jumped ship. The thing that makes him a slimy and untrustworthy lawyer is the fact that he appears to have no sense of loyalty. Malick was loyal to the DA's office, and his whole life was dedicated to advancing there. Soloff just went wherever he could push others around and serve his own interests, working in turn with Daniel Hardman, then Jessica Pearson, and eventually Robert Zane. 5. Faye Richardson. Faye, Denise Crosby, stands in front of the city skyline in Suits. Faye Richardson served as the final rival for Harvey Specter in Suits. Appointed to supervise the firm after a number of issues became evident, Faye was able to cause major disruptions to the firm. However, for the most part, Harvey was able to avoid getting hit by any of Faye's dealings, but that didn't last forever. In an effort to pull off a con on Faye and implicate her in wrongful dealings, Faye proves her strength of character by standing firm and being willing to go down if it means Harvey pays for his shady dealings. However, when Harvey presents an alternative idea to Faye in which he will leave the firm, as long as she walks away too, they settle things. In a way, this means Faye won out against Harvey, who had a perfect track record for his work up to that point. She wasn't actually villainous, so much as she was a major threat to the show's central cast, but she was a force to be reckoned with.